Coming up, as the Brooklyn Nets prepare for game number 2 against the Orlando Magic on Friday night, we take a look back at what Jalen Wilson accomplished on opening night for himself, plus a look at some of the other young players, how the veterans performed, and setting expectations for game number 2. All coming up next.
You are Locked On Nets, your daily Brooklyn Nets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, my friends, it is the Locked On Nets podcast, right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team, the Brooklyn Nets, every single day. He's Doug Norrie. I'm Adam Armbrecht. We thank you, as always, for making us your first listen of the day. We are 100% free on all those great platforms, and let you know that you can continue to win big this season on FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet, and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started today. And Doug, while there's some veterans that have some trade value that we want to talk about, we have to kick things off looking back at that first game against the Hawks and how Jalen Wilson, 34 minutes of power, may have moved up the hierarchy board after just one game.
Well, right now, if the season ended right now, the Nets would be in the playoffs or they'd be in the play-in because the point differential. Jalen Wilson, a big reason because, like, we don't want it to happen, obviously, 0-1, but right, like I said, hey, these are the top. I dove into the tiebreakers last night to make sure. Good.
Now, if I'm not mistaken, though, the Nets are also tied for the best lottery odds as well, which I think.
Well, no, because now point differential, buddy. See, this is where. Hey, come on, I'll educate you offline. Yeah, I'll educate you offline. Okay, so Jalen Wilson, obviously, a big part of the lack of the point differential piece here comes in, and we knew, I think, or we suspected that Jalen Wilson would have a pretty big role in this team. Summer League MVP, obviously. We saw him part of that first bench rotation during the preseason. So we were pretty confident that would stick around or that would hold. It was going to be sticky heading into the actual season itself. What we probably did not see was the 34 minutes that he played in the first game, tied for the team high with Cam Thomas and Schroeder. And going 3 for 7, 2 for 5 from 3, 8 for 8 from the free throw line. That's a stat that we really, really can sink our teeth into. So we had pretty decent expectations for Wilson just based on what we saw from him last year and then the clear growth summer preseason. Yeah. But to be this big a part of the rotation right out of the box, even guys who've been pretty bullish on this guy, even I was surprised by, like, wow, 34 minutes. I mean, we're talking like 6 man of the year stuff if, like, he keeps up that kind of run. So it was a really, really just like really encouraging performance for a guy who's already looking like one of the steals of the draft based on where he was drafted and what his playing time is.
Well, it's the classic, right, for everything that Sean marks and does well and doesn't do well. The one thing we always say, when he gets these draft picks, he does seem to find talent. And to get a second-round player who we know when you come out and you're a little bit older, that's already going to, on every radar, bump you down. Which, by the way, like, typically it ends up coming to be true that if you're on the older side, you usually don't end up coming to the NBA and making a significant role for yourself necessarily. But it's a reminder to NBA teams. Don't downplay maybe a guy's talent or pedigree or what you think his skill set is just because he's a couple of years older and you want to get a guy that's 20 and spend 3 years seeing if you can turn him into something. So it's obviously been impressive for Jalen Wilson since he was drafted by the Brooklyn Nets. You mentioned the 34 minutes that he played in this game, but just on the free throws, by the way, 23 total for the Nets in that game. 8 of them were from Jalen Wilson alone. So if you took him off the floor, you could actually paint that picture where it wasn't as aggressive as the Nets needed to be. We talked about that coming out of the game and Ben Simmons and what he did for the first few possessions versus the course of the game overall. And you really don't have a lot of other players that are like Jalen Wilson in that regard. And the thing that jumped out the most, beyond the fact that we know he's going to, knock down 3-pointers, took 5, made 2, 3 of 7 from the field overall, grabbed the 4 rebounds, had a couple of those moments where he just seems to have a nose for the boards, even though there's some bigger bodies around him. The work that he was able to do off the dribble a handful of times in this game was eye-opening, because we've been talking about him, as most people have, as 3-and-D wing, a Cam Johnson replacement. When you see him play with enough confidence on ball to say, hey, I'm going to try to take you off the dribble, work into the paint, maybe go to the basket, draw the foul, create for someone else on the roster, that means something significant for a team that, as we know, lacks ball handlers and could lose a few of them over the course of the year as we look to the deadline.
Yeah, the only way a 6'6" guy with, like, not an incredible wingspan gets to the free throw line 8 times in a game is by attacking the basket. Like, you really can't have it any other way. It's there's the few guys in the world that can sort of be foul merchants, the Hardens, the Trae Youngs of the world, right? The Brunsons, these guys that are just hunting fouls all the time. There's that. And then the only other way is to basically attack the basket and try to finish with contact. Like there. Yeah. And so if you're getting to the free throw line 8 times, and we just saw it with our own eyes, is that he's attacking closeouts. He's attacking the first defender. He's trying to get downhill on them. He's pretty decent at it. Like, this is like a game expansion. And if you can start doing that, and again, we started to see inklings of this in the preseason too, right? The Nets were just they were feeling a little more confident with him trying to be like a little bit more on ball creation. If that's going to stick, and it looks like it's probably going to, like, this is like leap territory, not superstar leap territory, but real NBA guy, real rotation, actually can punish you, can shoot the three. We already know that. And if you have to stick close to him on the 3-point line because you simply cannot allow him to get open because he's going to hurt you, because i.e. he's going to make it, right? Like, he's 32% last year, but he shot like 55% or something like that in summer league, and already 40% in the season. If you have to stay close on the 3-point line and the guy can put the ball on the deck, that's a skill set. Like, because you can actually attack closeout. So I think this is something that can stick around. I don't think right now he's a 20-point scorer or anything, but I mean, it's just so encouraging for a guy. If you get a guy in the basically the last pick of the second round, who's playing real NBA minutes in his second year, you nailed the draft pick. Like, that's just it. You nailed the draft pick. There's like no question about it.
And you have also in a player, obviously, when you think about whether it's going to be Cam Johnson and moving on from him and feeling like you have a player that can step into that role, that's a really nice piece to have in this too.
There's only going to be more minutes. Like, only more minutes are probably coming here, right? He's not going to play less. If he's playing 34 with the team like this, he'll probably be starting by the end of the year if they make 2 trades. Right? Like, he would be the starter. If they traded DFS or they traded Cam Johnson, I think he'd start.
Next man up.
And the Claxton thing throws it off a little bit. But yeah, I mean, this is what we're talking about with this guy.
And by the way, the 16 points answers our preseason question about over-unders on double-digit scores. Yeah, Jalen Wilson, he'll be the guy, right? We never look to the player that we talk about with fondness, that we're excited to see play in the regular season, that had a great summer league, that won the MVP. We say, well, is the minutes going to be there? Well, guess what? Play 34.
Well, we said him, though. Didn't we? I keep interrupting you. I'm sorry. Did we said him?
Yeah, it was. He was the guys who to get the over.
Could be there.
If Wilson hits, then we're good to go. So we did end up getting there. Actually, it's just more. I think it's more awesome that we're answering the question after one game as opposed to thinking, let's see where we are 15, 20 games into the season when it comes to other scores. Notable, 5 personal fouls in this game as well. He's trying to do it at both ends of the floor, so that'll be interesting to watch when you get into maybe some bigger matchups, guys that are quicker, right, if he's on the floor for those. But again, game 1, Jalen Wilson, absolute A+. Coming up here in a second, though, let's turn our attention over to Noah Clowney, who did not play a massive minute share in the opening night, and then also the veterans. There are some things to note about the players that we think could be on the trading block for Brooklyn. We'll go ahead and get into that here in just one moment.
All right, before we get to that, I'm going to tell you about our friends over at Prize Picks. Look, Prize Picks has made daily fantasy so easy. You can win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as few as 4 correct picks. Get into action in over 30 states right now. It's the only real money daily fantasy platform. It's got an injury insurance policy, so your lineup's going to stay in play even if one of those guys gets injured. Maybe they leave at the half, they don't return. Prize Picks wants to keep you in the game. It's the best place to get real money sports action. All you're doing is going more or less on the Prize Picks projections. You're piling those together, points, rebounds, assists, blocks, steals. You can put different sports together too. You throw some NBA guys and NFL guys. Actually, in Prize Picks, good for Prize Picks. Right now, if you go to prizepicks.com and they're going to load up, they kind of know who you like. Jalen Wilson was actually the first guy, more or less 3.5 rebounds on Prize Picks. I was shocked when Prize Picks just knows me really, really well. Good for them. This is how you know they're a good product. They know the customer before the customer even clicks. Jalen Wilson, just a guy right there, getting on the action over on Prize Picks. You can get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. Doesn't get better than that. Like I said, $50 with just 5 picks right there. You're good to go. Download the Prize Picks app today and use the code LOCKEDONNBA to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Once again, download the app. Use the code LOCKEDONNBA. Get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game.
All right, so as we continue today's Locked On Nets episode, takeaways from the season opener carrying over here to Friday night as the Nets will take on the Orlando Magic on the road before coming home for that very easy matchup at Barclays against the Milwaukee Bucks. They look pretty good in their first game. Dame Lillard, he might be a player. Who knows for sure, though. But Noah Clowney, on the other side of the young player roster, it's interesting because he only plays 15 minutes in this game, goes 2 of 6, takes three-pointers, knocks down one of them. So that's a good sign as well, expanding that range. Grabs 6 rebounds over the course of this, 3 on each end of the floor as well, and gives you 7 points. It's a smaller sample size. I think this is me needing to acknowledge a couple of things. One, that easy to acknowledge. We were right in the offseason saying, Zaire Williams, it looks like he's going to get a real chance here to have some run. With that, combined with Dorian Finney-Smith, combined with Nicholas Claxton coming back, there's a lot of long bodies here, and Ben Simmons still in the mix too. So Noah Clowney, it may take a little bit longer for me to get to that point I talked about in the offseason of, this kid should be playing 20, maybe 25 minutes. That's probably a little bit further off, but it's not a bad thing because the small sample was a good sample for him, I think, in that first game.
Yeah, I'm not worried about the numbers getting there. I think like, so if you want to take it
from a hype machine, I want to come in here and be doing the same thing we did for Jalen Wilson for Noah Clowney. 25 minutes, knocking down 3 for 6 from beyond the arc. You want to have the same energy around, obviously, the first round pick for the Nets.
Yeah, so the encouraging sign is like the preseason, he was still the 7th man off the bench, right? Or the second man off the bench, 7th man overall. Like he came in the preseason, they had done it with Jalen Wilson and Clowney came in together. Here they staggered it just a little bit, mostly because they kind of expanded Ben Simmons' minutes a little bit more. But Wilson came in first, and then a minute or two later, Clowney came in before Claxton. So I think that's still a really encouraging sign. The problem was he just played that first quarter, and then we never saw him again, right? And that's where the minutes got really buzzed. In the second half, he did play same kind of rotation, a little bit different. There, they followed the preseason thing where he and Wilson checked in at the same time, and they both played into the fourth quarter. I'm hoping like that becomes a little bit more of sort of what they end up doing. So I'm not really sure. Again, I think the Simmons starting Claxton off the bench probably screws this up a little bit in their minds around like what the perfect pairings are. And I think Simmons ended up getting in foul trouble, but it feels like the plan was actually to play him a few more minutes. Long story short, I think with Claxton here, I'm not discouraged. The minutes were a little lower than I thought, but where he's coming in the rotation, I just think it's like he's steady part of the plan. Still raw, still made some mistakes, had some defensive lapses, but overall, it's clear to me that he's part of the plan. And I think I wouldn't be shocked if like this 15 minutes, short of just some crazy foul stuff, was his lowest of the season. That's going to be, there you go. That's a prediction right there. I think the 15 minutes that he played in the first game will be the lowest number that we see from him, maybe the whole season. I just think it's just going to continue to grow. So I'm not really worried about it at all.
No, and it's like unlike Jalen Wilson, we talk about players that come in of a certain age, so you expect because they had more years of college, so that their game should be a little bit more ready, even if the ceiling is lower. The floor should be raised up a little bit. For Noah Clowney, young player, still a lot to work on, still flashed and gave you a really impressive block, did some nice things defensively, like all the athleticism we talk about now. And it's funny too, because you only get 15 minutes from Claxton in this game coming off of his injury. It's like 15 minutes for the both of these guys. We'll give them both 20 minutes and have, 18 of those 20 minutes be together. Like you just want to keep seeing that sample size of those two guys playing on the court together. The other one from a young player standpoint has to be Zaire Williams that we make mention of. 16 minutes for him. Again, low minute share. There's a lot of bodies there. I think we would both agree on the veteran side, 34 minutes for Schroeder, 32 minutes for Cam Johnson. Dorian Finney-Smith played 30. The veteran minutes, starter minutes were on the higher side than we probably anticipated. I think that's, like you're talking about with Noah Clowney's minutes, a blip, not a trend for what we'll see going forward for the season. But Zaire Williams, we said, hey, if you can start to improve that outside shot, 2 for 3. Like, I think, again, small sample size, good sample size. That's what you want from Zaire Williams. And I almost put him into the same category as Noah Clowney. Saw some nice things, did some good stuff, had some mistakes here and there, looked a little clunky at times. But overall, I can just squint and see 15 minutes, 18 minutes, get around that 20-minute mark potentially, get yourself in the mix of rotations. And all of this really just feels like put solid film on tape And then eventually when a couple of guys get cleared out, we can almost project and predict what the new rotation will look like if veterans get moved down the road.
I love watching Zaire Williams play. He's like so high energy.
Defensively, I like him a lot, right?
Yeah, wreaks havoc. He's such a menace. Like it doesn't really show
Plays
up.
A little bit of chaos, which I like.
Like no steals or blocks in this game, but he really does just kind of impact a lot of stuff around him. We saw in the preseason too. He had one game where he should have had like 4 steals, but two of the balls just end up going out of bounds.
Yes.
So I think that he clearly has a role
too,
here,
right? He hit the deck on I think on season opener. Sorry, I'll cut you off. He hit the floor scrambling for a couple as well. You're trying to go down for a loose ball, and just in terms of the positive chaos, I liked watching him around the top of the key as the half court sets are developing. He really does a great job of using his length to just kind of impact where you want the play to go. He seems very willing to play far out away from the paint and then kind of track back and pick up his assignment as needed.
Yeah, because he's super athletic. He's just really bouncy. And I mean, look, the whole story here with him, the athleticism is clearly there. I think the sort of like tenacity is clearly there. And I think the overall skill too, like just back cutting, getting to the basket, can get up above the rim. It's all there. He just has to hit threes. If he hits threes, then it's good. And if he doesn't, then he's still like probably a borderline NBA player, but it's just he has no real like sort of upside to him. 2 for 3 in this game. If that comes around even at all, then again, the Nets have something. We're just waiting to see on that. We just need to see like 100 threes or something like that. I don't know what the number is to really start feeling comfortable about the sample size, but it's maybe 100 is too high. Maybe not. But like overall, that's just what you want to see. He has the good news is he has a willingness to take them. We saw this in the preseason too. He definitely has a willingness to take them. I think he understands like this is what has to kind of happen for him here. He has to be able to make these, and the only way to make them is to take them. And so I think we should still see pretty quick trigger from him. It helps him if he can play with Simmons too, because Simmons obviously wants to default to just kind of handing the ball off to somebody else to take the shot. And that's going to be something that happens. I'm going to check real quick if their minutes. Their minutes didn't overlap at all. 3 minutes. Probably like to see a little bit more of that like overall. But with him, I think I think we already know what we're getting defensively. I think we already know what we're getting energy-wise. I just think we just have to see the outside shot fall. And good news, he's on a team that's like going to be willing to let him take it. And I think that wouldn't be the case for most other teams if you were to land somewhere else.
Before we turn our attention, we're brief preview on Orlando coming up here. But before we turn our attention over to that, there is the veteran group I want to talk about. Just on the high level, though, this is the rotation, right? Shake Milton gets in for 6 minutes, and we talked about this coming into the season too. Like this is it. I don't see anybody else. There'll be times when guys get into the mix, but we asked this question about where do some players stand in the hierarchy, right? Keon Johnson had an injury in the offseason. He played well at the end of last year. When you look at this rotation, even if the minutes, I think, are going to obviously fluctuate between these groups, this is where I think we're talking about, this is the unit. We think Zaire Williams or Noah Clowney, Nicholas Claxton's obviously going to play more minutes as he goes forward. I don't think you're going to get much deeper than these 10 guys, which is what it stands at right now. And obviously even Milton was really just a spell. Interesting to watch if you see any fluctuation in that area, or maybe that 10th spot becomes the fluid one for Jordy Fernandez, where he looks and says, okay, who do I want to maybe try tonight? Maybe it'll be Keon Johnson for one look here. Maybe it'll be player X, Y, or Z to find out if we have another player worth developing as we think down the road. But like one game in, feels like we know exactly where the roster stands, the hierarchy, and which players are going to get run consistently, right?
Yeah, for sure. And I think, look, injuries will play a part here. Like, the players just get injured. Although, I mean, I guess they have injuries that are affecting some of it now, too, because Watford and Daron Sharp. So it's like always a little hard to know, but this is the stuff that just ends up over the course of a season where you're just never totally sure. All right, we get in some of the veteran stuff here in a second, including one Mr. Nick Claxton. Talk about what we saw from him in the first game, for better or mostly worse. We'll talk about that here in just 1 second. Before that, we'll talk to our friends over at FanDuel. NFL fans, NBA fans, you can get in on the season, start it, keep it going with a big return on FanDuel. It's America's #1 sportsbook. You get a hunch, middle of the game, you check the latest stats, view live play-by-play, the same page where you're already placing your bets. I got so many different things going on here when it comes to FanDuel. You get on the season leader stuff. Cam Thomas already climbed 1 spot in the points per game season leader. He's up to 7th right now. Woo! After, again, right now he's 2nd in the league in scoring. So take that for what it's worth. Also, I just did check the 6 man of of the year odds to see if Jalen Wilson got into the mix there. Get your act together, FanDuel. Not on there right now. I'm going to make a prediction right now. He's on there. He's on there at some point during the season. I mean, this list runs so deep.
I want most improved.
Well, Ben Simmons is on the 6-man list, but he's starting. So come on, let's go. We'll figure it out. They'll get it together. They need a little more data to get it going. Get yourself. You don't need any more data. You're just going to get yourself started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 real money bets. $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Place that first $5 real money bet on FanDuel.com, America's #1 sportsbook.
All right, so as we tie a bow on this Locked On Nets episode, talking about obviously some additional takeaways coming out of the Hawks game season opener where the Nets lost by just 4, took it down to basically the wire, and now we'll turn the attention to the Orlando Magic. Mentioned wanting to talk about the veterans, and I will say it's funny because we're going to start with Nicholas Claxton and what I would call almost a basketball play on his flagrant 2 that got him ejected against the Hawks. But it's funny. I chuckled that, yeah, Nicholas Claxton's a veteran. I still don't think about him because there's clearly a divide between him and these 30-plus-year-olds that are on the roster. Nicholas Claxton is a veteran in the NBA. He's been around too long to be talked about as one of the young guys, but he still gets mentioned in both veins. Part of maybe the young core, also a veteran with experience. When we look back, though, we might think, is he a veteran with experience? Because he came down with I'm going to stop short of calling it a dirty play because I don't think he did it.
Don't stop short
of being dirty. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think he went in with the intention of being dirty, but like it's everything that you would comprise. If you were watching Rasheed Wallace back in the day, you go, of course, the dirt. That's a dirty one there. Dude, I don't know. What an aggressive non-basketball related play to prevent a basket and then walk off the court, kind of doing the old arm shrug, which we've seen from Claxton before when he commits some of these, borderline egregious fouls or egregious fouls. Yes. And borderline dirty plays.
It was so dirty. I won't stop short. It was such a dirty play. He knew exactly what he was doing. He had,
it's not short of him being a dirty player, but he does have these dirty play moments. Right?
Okay.
And maybe
you're right. Too many of these moments. He just has too many of these moments, like throughout his career. He just does this stupid stuff all the time. Yeah. It's years of this stuff now. And you want to call it, it's being over aggressive. Okay. He has so many examples through the years where he just does stupid fouls, stupid technicals, borderline dirty plays, actual dirty plays like this one. Like this was just dirty. And he's lucky too. He's lucky that Daniels showed some restraint. Daniels could have, I thought he was going to punch him from behind. Like that was such a dirty foul. Because when Claxton kind of like posters up into the crowd, I don't know why he does this, but he kind of walks off, saunters off into the crowd after just like nearly beheading this guy. Yeah. And Daniels really actually probably showed restraint, and so did the rest of the team, because it's a totally dirty foul. It was so obvious he was going to get kicked out. Like right when you saw one replay of it, it's like, well, he's done. Oh, yeah. I actually thought there might be a suspension. But the thing with Claxton is he's a really good player. I think the aggression comes out in his play, and he plays sort of above a level because he is ultra aggressive. Like I think it's where the blocks come from. I think he does a lot of stuff on the court that you benefit from that aggression.
Right.
But he just has this ticky-tack stuff or this borderline dirty stuff, and it's been years of it. We saw it way more last year, frustration. Yeah. And first game, 15 minutes, and he nearly murders this guy so needlessly. Because he might have even been on the block. He might have been on to block it. Like if you're gonna I just think it's so annoying.
So it is. Ultimately it is that. Now after the game, he said I can't do it. I can't get kicked out of the game. I need to be there for my team. He said it with a little bit of a light air to it, but I think he actually meant it with some level of sincerity. He's like, maybe I got to talk to a therapist because there's something that clicks for me about getting over aggressive in those moments. And to your point, the aggression helps him in so many situations. But I actually think on those plays, it's laziness is what ends up leading to those type of fouls. Because to your point, he is ultra athletic. There's probably the world where on that play, if you want to try to impact it, that Claxton is capable physically of leaping from behind and trying to swat that ball over the top as Daniels goes towards the rim. Now, he may still end up catching him on the head in that instance based on that he's trailing on the play. He may end up still committing a foul, may end up being a flagrant. But that version of the play was, they have a breakout. I'm not going to get there. I don't want him to get the basket. And rather than stopping short, and just saying like, yeah, I'm going to give it up because I don't have position. And by the way, you'd probably come on and say like, oh, Claxton, could he have done a little bit more in that play to try to prevent the bucket? Yeah, you're going to expose yourself to that. But the only play that he looked like he was willing or capable of making was just, I'm going to hack this dude across the throat and live with the results. And it is you bring up the one good point about it, the sauntering to the crowd. I said before, the shrug of the shoulders as he goes to the bench. That's the part that probably bothers me most in any of it. I don't like any of the dirty fouls. I don't like seeing guys potentially get injured. But the fact that his post-foul reaction is one of like, I don't know if I did anything wrong.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't do anything wrong here. That's the hard part, especially on ones that feel so blatant when you see the replay.
Yeah, it was like, I don't know. I just think, especially the Nets are getting back into the game at that point. It gives them a technique.
Momentum too.
And they got lucky because Dyson missed both free throws. Like they just kind of got lucky that they stayed in.
They also had the tech on that play, so the Nets ended up being +1. After all of that, Cam Johnson shot the tech down the other end. They came back and shot 2 free throws and got the ball. The Nets ended up being up 1 on that possession after the flagrant 2 on Claxton and everything else. But you're right though. Opening game, and we know the Nets are going to lose in a lot of matchups here. But listen, if you want to have a good vibe and just win the season opener for the fun of it for Jordy Fernandez, Nicholas Claxton getting kicked out after 15 minutes, that's going to take your chances and greatly reduce them with the value that he brings on both ends of the floor.
I just think that it's just one of these. It just has to stop. It has to stop. Like he just can't have these things happen. It's just he's been in the league too long. He got paid. Like he deserves it. He's one of the better shot blockers in the game when it comes to body control and ball awareness. Like Dyson Daniels is a 6'4" shooting guard. Like he could block the shot. He could try to block the shot. Anyway, we can let's talk real quick Magic and then before we get out of here.
Well, and you know what? Coming into the Magic game, so I mean, I'll say, what am I watching for? And I'm actually watching for the veterans for the Brooklyn Nets. You go back to this game and you say 8 rebounds for Dorian Finney-Smith. That's a nice stat that jumps off the box score. Schroeder, 7 assists, jumps off the box score. 5 for 6 at the line for Cam Johnson, jumps off the box score. But when you go down and remember 17 of 43 from beyond the arc, 13 attempts came from Cam Thomas. He made 7 of them. The bench unit, Wilson, Williams, and Clowney accounted for 5 out of 11 from deep. When you have Dorian Finney-Smith, Cam Johnson, and Schroeder combining to go 5 of 19 from deep, like the veteran players, these are the guys that you need to be hitting their mark on what is considered the back of their proverbial baseball card. They're interesting to watch here. Less so for Schroeder. He needs to be a facilitator primarily. But Finney-Smith, Cam Johnson, there's something nice in their stats, but I wouldn't call these, the great first sample for them as they go into a pivotal season from a Nets front office standpoint.
Yeah, look, it's going to be harder to have. It's going to be harder to have great looks when this is your team offense, right? Yeah. I just, you can be a 40% 3-point shooter. If you can be a 40% 3-point shooter when you're playing with Chris Paul and Devin Booker, right? And your shots are going to look a lot easier. And as the team gets worse, the shots get harder, and it's just going to be hard for them to shoot a really high percentage from 3 when they don't have tons of offensive talent. Like that's kind of the story, right? And so it has to improve. I would spam 3s too if I was the Nets, but it's just I wouldn't expect these numbers to like greatly improve. Does that make sense? Like I don't think there's great room for upside when you look around like who this team is really.
No, you're gonna that's what's the tricky part about it. Just showing value, showcasing value, and the belief in other teams around the league that these guys are still worth going after and getting, right? So you're gonna have to squint.
I think
you're another NBA team and say they'll be better when they get to us because they don't have the talent there is not good enough for them to be the best version, right?
NBA teams. Oh, sorry,
they get this.
Yes to that. NBA teams get that part of it. Yes, like they clearly know that this is probably a Nets problem, not a player X, Y, or Z problem, right? Would be my guess. I think that part, and if anything, if the Nets, sorry I didn't address that. Anything, the Nets, like them playing hard and staying in it helps these guys, even if the shooting stuff isn't perfect, right? Because it shows that the fire's still there. So I think it all ends up being positive, but I wouldn't worry about it going forward. Okay, we got to get out of here.
Keep an eye on Paolo. Keep an eye on Franz tonight. Big matchups.
Real quick. Plus, we got to keep the thing here. Nets plus 11.5. You like the points? You go first here.
I'm taking the Magic laying the points, even though it's a bigger number.
Good. I was wondering. Okay, I was actually going to take the Nets and the points. There we go.
Nice. Here we go. Yeah, let's try to keep this going here. Make it interesting all season long.
Yeah, okay, that's plus 11.5. There you go. Go to WeGotNets.com, grab a free copy of the stories to start the season. Totally free. Just need your email, and you're all good to go. Make sure you subscribe wherever you listen to them. Wherever you listen to Locked On Nets as well. YouTube, podcast, wherever.
Moonlight drowns out all but the brightest stars, and that is J.R.R. Tolkien.
Oh, obviously one of the all-time great poets. We're back again tomorrow, next week, talking more Brooklyn Nets basketball.
Basketball. Yeah.